Hello and welcome, friends. Today we will be going through the papillary lesions of the breast from Kurt's notes. So let's begin. So the papillary lesions of the breast, let's classify them broadly, and after we see the broad classification, we will study all the individual categories, right? So the papillary lesions of the breast are generally classified into three main groups. So the first would be the benign lesion, which will include intraductal papilloma. The second one would be the pre-malignant condition. So the things that are not benign per se, but are also not malignant, but they have a tendency to become malignant. And that we will subclassify on the basis of being focal or diffuse. So if they have just focal DCIS features, then we will call them papilloma with DCIS. Whereas if they have diffuse DCIS features, then we will call them papillary DCIS. So the first one was benign, just benign, intraductal papilloma. The second one is a pre-malignant condition which we have subclassified into focal and diffuse, and the focal DCIS features would be called papilloma with DCIS. So that basically means that the main lesion is a papilloma and it just has some areas, some focal areas of DCIS. Therefore, it is a papilloma with DCIS. Whereas if we find that the DCIS features are very diffuse, then the lesion is most likely originally a DCIS, and the DCIS is organized, or the DCIS is expressing itself in a papillary fashion. So focal means basically a papilloma but with DCIS, whereas diffuse means basically a DCIS with the papillary features. So this was as our second group, pre-malignant. Then our third group, malignant. So the third group can also be further subclassified on the basis of pattern. We ask ourselves, okay, I see a papillary lesion, there is no myoepithelial cell layer, so it's definitely malignant. And now what pattern do I observe? Is it encapsulated, presence within a capsule or a cystic wall? Then I will call it an encapsulated papillary carcinoma. If the predominant pattern is solid, again with loss of myoepithelial cells, papillary architecture, but the predominant architecture is solid with some areas that are papillary, then I will call it a solid papillary carcinoma. Whereas if I find edges that are infiltrating and going down into the dermis and infiltrating the stroma, then I will call it an infiltrative papillary carcinoma. So now we are done with the overview. Benign, just one thing, intraductal papilloma. The second, pre-malignant, two further subclassifications for the second group, which are focal DCIS features, which I will call papilloma with DCIS. And if I find diffuse DCIS features, then this is basically DCIS with papillary features. And then the third, malignant pattern, which can further be subclassified into three main types. The first one, which is encapsulated or encystic, the encapsulated or the intracystic or encystic papillary carcinoma. The second one with predominantly solid features, a solid papillary carcinoma. And the third one with predominantly infiltrative features, which is infiltrative papillary carcinoma. Okay, now let's begin. We'll come to this table in the end. To summarize everything, we will go through all these lesions one by one. So first of all, our benign lesion, intraductal papilloma. So, the intraductal papilloma, what would be the clinical presentation? The history would be a central solitary or peripheral multiple lesions, and then the patient can present with a serosanguinous discharge. So, this is number one, our clinical presentation. Number two, what is the pathophysiology? This is a benign intraductal proliferation, but the question is, what are the histopathological features? So, the histopathological features, of course, number one, it's intraductal papilloma, so the proliferation should be present within a duct, and here we can see that this is a duct, and within the duct lining, and within the duct we see this papillary proliferation, right? Then this duct should have these papillary projections with fibrovascular cores. Here we can see on the inside the fibrovascular core, and these are the papillary projections which we can see over here, right? So number one, something that is proliferating intraductally. Number two, I find papillary projections with fibrovascular cores. And number three, what about the epithelial cells that I find? Like what sort of epithelium should they be present? The epithelium will both be epithelial as well as myoepithelial cell layer. So once I run my stains, my epithelial stain or the internal, like inner luminal epithelial stain, which is CK7, my low molecular weight cytokeratin, and when I run my myoepithelial layer stain, which is the outer myoepithelial or the basal layer, and the stain for it is CK56, the high molecular weight cytokeratin, P63, actin, calponin, smooth muscle myosin, heavy chain, S100. Once I run these stains, both these types of stains will be positive. My inner luminal stains as well as my outer myoepithelial stains will be positive. Again, which is indicating that the outer myoepithelial layer is present. Therefore, this is a benign lesion, right? Okay. And then besides this, an intraductal papilloma can have what additional features? It can have areas of superimposed UDH, apocrine metaplasia, closing adenosis, and duct ectasia. And what is the molecular finding for intraductal papilloma? That is PIK3CA mutations, and it is basically monoclonal. And what is the management of intraductal papilloma? It is variable, but once you have found intraductal papilloma on a biopsy or a core biopsy, you don't need to go back and re-excise it. So this is intraductal papilloma. Now moving on to our second category, which was pre-malignant conditions, not benign, not malignant, but just pre-neoplastic or pre-malignant. Then we divided our pre-malignant further into what sort of features am I getting? What is the geographical distribution of the DCIS? Do I find focal DCIS or did I find diffuse DCIS? If I found focal DCIS, then I'm going to call it's basically a papilloma with some focal areas of DCIS. But if I find a diffuse DCIS, then I'm going to call it a DCIS that has papillary features or papillary DCIS. Okay, so now let's look at what Dr. Kurt tells us about this lesion. So the first thing he says that this is, of course, like an intraductal lesion. It will be an intraductal lesion. You will find an intraductal papilloma, and within that intraductal papilloma, you would have foci of DCIS or ADH, right? And what do we mean by foci of DCIS or ADH, as we can look over here as well? So first a papilloma in the picture, first a papilloma, and then after a papilloma we find these areas that are developing, these proliferations that are developing within those papilla, and they are basically like DCIS. And what we mean by DCIS is we find monotonous cells. So the cells are like copy paste of each other. There is a monoclonal population. The cells are very similar to each other in shape and size. They are not pleomorphic, but they are resembling each other a lot, right? And then they have cytological and architectural features of low-grade neoplasia, which we already discussed in our in situ lesions, right? So if we find that the nuclear features are low-grade, number 3, so what are we going to call it? If it's less than 2 to 3 millimeters, and if it is greater than 3 millimeters. So if the overall architecture is less than 3 millimeters, as we have already discussed in our lecture on in situ lesions, that less than 3 millimeters means that we will call it a papilloma just with ADH. Whereas if we find that it is greater than 3 millimeters, or we said more than 2 consecutive duct spaces, when new criteria is 2 millimeter and then more than 2 duct spaces, then we will call it a papilloma with a DCIS. And similarly, if we find that the nuclear features are becoming more and more pleomorphic with more comedonecrosis and more mitosis, then, and the architecture is also becoming more solid pattern, then we can say that it is either intermediate or high grade based on the nuclear features. So papilloma with either intermediate grade DCIS or papilloma with high grade DCIS. But the intermediate and high grade DCIS, as we have already discussed, it does not have any size criteria. The size criteria is just for distinction from low grade DCIS less than 2 or 3 millimeters or less than 2 duct spaces, and then less than 2 millimeter or 2 duct spaces is ADH, right? And then greater than 3 millimeter or 2 millimeter or greater than 2 duct spaces was our low-grade DCIS. So this was if we find just focal DCIS, right? What if we find a papillary lesion, and now with this papillary lesion we find a diffuse DCIS, right? So the diffuse DCIS basically means that this is actually DCIS, but it is expressing itself in the form of papillary features, right? So what we will find is that we will find these fibrovascular cores, and these fibrovascular cores will be in the pattern of filiform, arborizing, like as we can see over here, right? They are filiform, just looking like fingers. They are arborizing, branching, as we can see this branches coming from here, these branches over here. So we form filiform arborizing fibrovascular core. Some of these areas also have fibrous as well as vascular core in the middle, right? All these areas have vessels and fibrous tissue in the middle, right? And then once we look at the cells, we find that they are epithelial cells that are present. But once we stain with our myoepithelial cell markers, which are CK56, P63, actin, calponin, smooth muscle myosin heavy chain, S100, we will find that it's just staining with CK7. CK7 is staining our luminal cells, right? But the myoepithelial cells are basically absent, right? And then if we stain the entire lesion, so if we stain like of course we stain the entire slide, and then we see that around that area, since it's an intraductal proliferation, right? So around that area, the outside of the duct, that still stains with our basal myoepithelial cell markers, which is CK56, P63. So the outer area, the outer lining is still staining, but within that outer lining, these inside cells, they do not have this dot-like positivity of P63 or cytoplasmic positivity of CK56. Then this is not present, but this is still present in the outer ductal lining. Myoepithelial layers are still present. Then this is basically a DCIS with papillary features, right? And this can generally be deceptively bland as well. It's not necessary that these cells should be very pleomorphic. They can just be in the form of stratified spindle cells, they can be columnar cells, or they can also be clear cells, right? And it can also be accompanied by other patterns of DCIS. For example, it can be low grade or it can be high grade as well, by the way. And then it can also be accompanied by other patterns such as cribriform DCIS, right? And can also have comedonecrosis. And then the grading will be based on DCIS. If you find like bland nuclei which are very similar to each other, monomorphic, then we will incline more towards low grade DCIS. But if we find cells like this which have become so enlarged, so pleomorphic, right, with necrosis, comedonecrosis, lots of mitosis, then we will call it on the basis of nuclear features, not on the basis of architecture. On the basis of nuclear features, we will call it high grade DCIS with papillary features. So now we are done with our benign lesion, which was intraductal papilloma. We are done with our pre-malignant conditions, in which one was focal, which is papilloma with DCIS, and one was diffuse, which is basically DCIS with papillary features or papillary DCIS. And now we will move to our malignant lesions. And if you remember from the beginning of the presentation, there are three malignant lesions that we will cover based on the pattern of the papillary lesion that we can observe. So the first one was an encapsulated or intracystic. The second one was solid papillary carcinoma, and the third one is an invasive papillary carcinoma. So let's go through them one by one. So the first one, of course, as the name indicates, encapsulated. So the first thing that we have to find or look for, we have to find a very well-defined, well-circumscribed lesion, either present within a predefined capsule, as we can see over here, this capsule, right? So there should be a circumscribed round mass. Typically, this presents in older women and should have a fibrous capsule, or it should be present within a cystic space. So mass, confined, well-circumscribed, solid mass, older woman, and then it has a well-defined capsule or a cystic space. And then besides being well-defined, it can have like pushing borders. Of course, it's a neoplasm, it's malignant, so it can have within that capsule as well pushing borders, right? And then since it's papillary, the second word is papillary, right? So because the second word is papillary, we have to find fibrovascular cores, and then those fibrovascular cores should be covered with neoplastic epithelium, since it's also a carcinoma, right? So here we find like some areas would have these fibrovascular cores, right? And then I should have covered it with yellow. Yeah, I used yellow for the fibrovascular cores. And besides the fibrovascular cores, I will find a neoplastic epithelium. So what I mean by neoplastic epithelium is that the luminal epithelial cells will be neoplastic, right? And then they might be pleomorphic, they might show high grade features, but there will be an absence of myoepithelial cells. So when I do my CK56 or P63, there will be a complete absence of staining, right? So this will tell me that this is basically an encapsulated or intracystic papillary carcinoma. And what about the prognosis of intracystic papillary carcinoma? It's very favorable. And how do we stage it? We stage it as PTIS, since it's encapsulated or intracystic, so we treat it as an in situ lesion instead of an invasion lesion. But what if we find invasion beyond the capsule with an infiltrative appearance? Then what will we call it? Then we will call it an invasive carcinoma, likely of no special type. And then we have to sample the wall thoroughly, because of course we don't know where it got invasive and became, how deep it went. So we need to find out and sample the wall, the entire capsule, to look for invasion or infiltration. Okay. So this was our first one, which is just encapsulated or intracystic. So consider, like, think about it, okay, something that is still well defined within the walls of the fortress. But now as we go towards solid, it's like the soldiers or the opposing armies are now going outside, and they are forming these, you can say, these battalions and these groups, right? So these battalions and these groups are in the form of a solid papillary carcinoma, right? So solid expansile nodular growth, here we can see the nodules, right? Solid and expansile, that is going outside, and then it might have pushing borders as well, but the predominant pattern is a solid pattern. But along with the solid pattern, since it's papillary, so we need to find some cores somewhere in some areas with yellow color, right? So some cores somewhere in some areas that will be papillary and fibrovascular, but the predominant pattern is still solid, right? And then we will have cells that will be monotonous, rounded, spindle shaped, and then they will have epithelial cells, can have mild to moderate atypia. The cytoplasm can be eosinophilic granular, but the most important thing again for it would be you will not find any myoepithelial cells. Once you do your basal cytokeratin CK5-6, the cytoplasmic stain would be absent, and once you do your nuclear stain, the transcription factor for basal myoepithelial cells P63, the P63 staining would also be absent, right? And then one special feature of ciliary papillary carcinoma is that it shows the differentiation of neuroendocrine, therefore it can be synaptophysin, chromogranin and CD56 positive. And then question number 3, what if it is entirely rounded, well circumscribed nodule, right? And this well circumscribed nodule is not showing any infiltration or ragged borders, regardless of if it has myoepithelial cells or not. We are going to treat it as a solitary papillary carcinoma in situ. And if it has infiltrative strands or ragged borders, then we will call it papillary carcinoma with invasion, and it will frequently be mucinous. And what about the prognosis of this particular lesion? Just like our encapsulated or intracystic papillary carcinoma, for which we called it that the prognosis is very favorable and it is staged as PTIS. Similarly, the solid papillary carcinoma also has a very good prognosis. Okay, moving on to our third lesion, which is invasive papillary carcinoma. So as the name indicates, that's very obvious and apparent. It should be invasive. You should find some invasive component cells that are breaking apart from the main place where the malignancy developed and then going out into the stroma and away from the main lesion, right? And then since it's papillary, so you should find some areas which are forming these papillary structures, and along with these papillary structures you find on the inside fibrovascular cores. Okay, so you're finding papillary structures, you're finding fibrovascular cores, and then the epithelium is of course neoplastic, right? The luminal epithelium, as you can observe over here as well, that the cells are becoming so pleomorphic, high-grade nuclei, lots of mitosis, right? And then once you look for myoepithelial cells, you will not find myoepithelial cells. CK5-6 and P63 would be flat negative. And then the incidence of this is very rare. But before you call anything inside the breast invasive papillary carcinoma, it is very important that you first exclude metastasis, of course, that this can actually be a papillary carcinoma that originated in the ovaries of a lady or a lungs of a lady or a male person, and then this has actually metastasized to the breast. So make sure you do your PAX8 WT1, and then for your lung you do your TTF1 napsin A to exclude lung or ovarian cancer before you give anyone a diagnosis of invasive papillary carcinoma, and even considering that it is very rare. So you must exclude the other things first, and then once your TTF1 napsin A exclude your lung cancer, and WT1 and PAX8 exclude the ovarian cancer, then you can call it an invasive papillary carcinoma. So let's do an algorithmic approach first to how we are going to work up a papillary lesion, and then we will wrap up by going through the table as well as our main classification that we did in the beginning for papillary lesions. Okay, so let's do the algorithmic approach. So okay, I have a slide today, I have a biopsy or I have an excision, and on that excision I find papillary areas. What do I do? What's the first question that I ask myself? Question number 1, what is the predominant pattern? And I have two options. Is it a predominant papillary configuration versus a predominant solid configuration? If I have a predominant papillary configuration, I go to the right hand side and the right arm of this chart algorithm, right? Okay, then I have a predominantly papillary configuration, and I ask myself question number 2. right? What is the myoepithelial staining like? So I did my CK56, I did my P63, or maybe like I did my smooth muscle myosin heavy chain, calponin, actinin, right? And then I find that there is a complete layer that is present, right? So this is positive, right? A complete layer that is present. Myoepithelial cells are highlighting beautifully. Then this is most likely a benign lesion that is an intraductal papilloma. But what if I'm doing my myoepithelial stains, I find that the myoepithelial layer is completely incomplete or absent, right? So even if it is patchy staining incomplete, then it might be a papillary carcinoma, right? So then I will look for again the staining pattern. Is it like the myoepithelial cell staining is like not present on the inside, right? So the inside, the papilla, the individual papillae, that is not present over here. The individual papillae lack that staining, but that staining is still present on the outside of the duct, right? Then I will call it DCIS involving a papillary carcinoma. So basically this DCIS component that was present inside, that is not showing the stain, but the outside of the duct is showing the stain. So that shows that the outside of the duct is indicating a papilloma, whereas the inside that is not staining, right? So the complete layer is outside, but the inside that is not staining is basically DCIS. So it is DCIS that is involving, this is basically a papillary DCIS, right? Not DCIS involving a papilloma. We will come to that in a bit. Rather, let's go to that picture. I'm sorry about the confusion. Let's go to the picture so that everything becomes clear, and then we can go back to our discussion, right? So suppose that this is our intraductal proliferation. This is the outside of the duct over here that I'm highlighting right now in red, right? And then this on the inside, that these protrusions that have gone in, that I drew with pink previously, and now I'm drawing with yellow, these protrusions that are going inside, this is basically consider that this is your DCI. This is your DCIS, right? So now, what if you find the staining pattern that both the inside papillary projections along with your outside are staining, but whatever cells are filling these papillary projections, they are not staining, right? So the cells that are filling the papillary projections are not staining, but the papilla are staining individually, the outside of the papilla, and the outside of the duct is also staining. So let me write this down. This is P, the papilla, and this is G, the duct lining, right? And this is I, the inside epithelium, right? So inside epithelium is not staining, which means that this is DCIS. Papilla and the duct are staining, which means that this is a DCIS that is involving a papilloma. Okay. Now, once I find that even the individual papilla are not staining, the inside epithelium is not staining, but the outside duct wall is staining, then this is basically papillary DCIS, because the DCIS papilla will also not stain, right? Because this is not a DCIS involving a papilloma, but this is basically papillary DCIS, right? So the papillary DCIS will not have staining on the inside, no staining on the papilla, but only staining of the duct wall. And then if I find an intracystic or encapsulated papillary carcinoma, then staining is totally absent. No staining, no staining of the papilla, no staining of the duct, right? But just a capsule or intracystic cavity and no staining anywhere at all, right? So this is an intracystic or encapsulated papillary carcinoma. Totally staining absent outside is intracystic or papillary carcinoma, but complete layer that is present just outside, right? But it is incomplete or absent on inside is papillary DCIS, right? And the third one was just like our DCIS involving a papilloma, where we found staining on both sides, right? So the inside staining is also present and the outside ductal staining is also present. Okay, now let's move on to our second leg, in which we said our question number 1 was, do I find predominantly solid configuration? So if I find a predominantly solid configuration, I will do my basal cytokeratins, and once I do my basal cytokeratins CK56, right, if I find that it is positive in the solid area, I can call it a papilloma. with a florid epithelial hyperplasia, so papilloma with UDH. Since my basal cytokeratins are staining positive, but it's a solid pattern, so therefore it's papilloma with UDH, right? But if I find variable CK56 staining, or I find that the staining is negative, then I will call it a solid papillary carcinoma. And then solid papillary carcinoma I can further subclassify by doing my neuroendocrine markers also on the morphology, but also by doing synaptophysin, chromogranin, CD56. I can classify that if the neuroendocrine markers are positive, it is a solid papillary carcinoma with neuroendocrine differentiation, and it can be spindle cell carcinoma or EDCIS as well. Or if the neuroendocrine features are absent, then it is a solid papillary carcinoma. Okay, so finally, now let's do a revision of this table, and this table is going to sum up whatever we have done previously. So let's do our classification first. We said one lesion is benign, which is intraductal papilloma, right? And it will have the myoepithelial staining both at the outside of the duct along with the inside of the papilla, right? Then we said two more things, some that are pre-malignant, right? Papilloma with DCIS, which is basically the focal DCIS component present within a papilloma, right? And the focal DCIS component will just be absent, but the papilloma individual cores as well as the outside will be positive for myoepithelial cells. Then we call papillary DCIS, in which we said basically it's the diffuse DCIS with some areas that are papillary, so the myoepithelial staining will stay in the outside of the duct, but the individual fibrovascular cores and the inside of the lesion will be totally negative, right? And then we said that on the basis of these three patterns, we have three malignant lesions: the encapsulated papillary carcinoma, the solid papillary carcinoma, and then the invasive papillary carcinoma, right? And all of these will have no lining, like the encapsulated will of course be encapsulated or within intercyst. The solid will also form these solid structures, and the invasive will of course be infiltrative, but the myoepithelial cells will staining would basically be negative. So this was just a quick overview. Let's look at what the table says individually. So we are going to compare the papillary architecture. Then after the papillary architecture, we will look at what happens to the epithelial cells, and then we will look at the myoapse in the papilla, right? And then the myoapse at the periphery. So two places where we look for the myoapse, in the papilla and then in the papillary. So papilla basically means, as I showed you in the diagram that I had made previously, right, that this is your duct, right? And inside this duct, these are the papilla, right? So this is myoapse inside the papilla. We will look over here, and this is myoapse at the periphery, the peripheral ductal lining, right? So we look at myoapse in the ducts as well as in the papilla, and then we will do the individual stains. CK56, our high molecular weight cytokeratin for basal myoepithelial markers, and then ER and PR, which are basically our inner luminal marker stains, and then any other special stain that we can do. So we are going to basically compare these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 features, right? So let's start with the papillary architecture, right? So the papillary architecture in our on our papilloma lesions, so all these first two are the papilloma lesions, would be broad blunt fronts, right, that will be formed. But once it starts going towards the pre-malignant and then the diffuse pre-malignant, which is papillary DCIS, we will start having slender fronts that are sometimes branching, right? And then as we go to encapsulated, it will still be numerous slender fronts, right? But the additional thing you already know, it's present within a cyst or within a fibrous capsule wall. Then in a solid papillary carcinoma, what will be the papillary structure? The definitive, like the predominant structure, would be solid, and there will be some inconspicuous fibrous septa. And similarly for invasive, the predominant structure would be an invasive carcinoma with some papillary morphology and fibrovascular cores here and there, right? Okay, so we are done with the first thing, which is papillary architecture. What sort of papilla do we find? From broad and blunt fronts, we went to slender and narrow and solid, and then ultimately infiltrative. Okay. Now, the epithelial cells. As we are in an intraductal papilloma, which is a benign lesion, so we can predict that just like in UDH, we had a heterogeneous population, a polyclonal population. So, one type of neoplastic cell is not proliferating and giving rise to multiple clones, but rather we have a heterogeneous non-neoplastic proliferation similar to a UDH. So, this would be the state of the epithelial cells for intraductal papilloma. Then for the papilloma with DCIS, we have focal areas. Remember, not diffuse, since it's papilloma and the papilloma is forming some areas of DCIS. So focal areas with cytological features of DCIS, usually low grade but can be intermediate or high grade. And then papillary DCIS is basically entire thing has the cell population, the monotonous cell population of DCIS, and then the features can be low grade, high grade, intermediate grade, whatever, right? So these are the basically inner epithelial cells. Remember, the inner epithelial cells stained with CK7, which is our low molecular weight cytokeratin. And then as we start going towards the carcinomas, right, then we have the entire population will be a single cell population. Of course, it can have features of DCIS. This is encapsulated carcinoma. It can be micropapillary, cribriform, can be solid. There can be fusion of the papilla, right? And then the solid papillary can be from low to intermediate grade, can have spindled appearance or a neuroendocrine morphology. Whereas the invasive papillary carcinoma can be low, can be intermediate, can have high grade nuclei. Now let's compare the myoepithelial cells at the papillae as well as the myoepithelial cells at the periphery together. Since when we look at the staining together, then we can come to a conclusion, right? So first of all, I said that for our intraductal papilloma, everywhere myoepithelial cells are present. They are present at the individual papilla lining as well as they are present at the outer ductal periphery. So here we can see positive, right? The first one. Next, for the papilloma with DCIS, it is a papilloma, right? So will be present at the papillary areas as well as the ductal areas, but this middle proliferation, this DCIS component will not have this myoepithelial cell layer, right? But once it is DCIS, that is papillary, the outer ductal lining is positive. But when we look at the individual papilla, because it is DCIS basically, so these individual papilla will not have the stain. So individual papilla, the myoeps and the papilla will be absent, but at the periphery, the ductal lining, they will be present. And for an encapsulated solid and invasive papillary carcinoma, super easy. Most of the time negative. But for solid, it can sometimes be positive. But other than that, negative, myoeps at the periphery, no myoeps at the papilla. And then we'll compare the CK5-6. Of course, again, very predictable. CK5-6 is the basal myoepithelial marker, and this is for showing the myoepithelial cells positive in the myoeps and in the UDH portion, right? CK5-6 will be positive in the myoeps and the UDH, but will be negative in the DCIS component for our papilloma with DCIS. And then for papillary DCIS, it will be positive in the peripheral myoeps, but will be negative in the lesion. So this staining pattern is just the same as I already told you. And then negative in all our three carcinomas. And then ERPR, again, what is ERPR showing? It is our inner luminal marker. So it's our secretory glandular epithelium phenotype marker. So anything that has the preserved secretory glandular epithelium, which is a proliferation of the inner luminal cells, will still stain with ER and PR. So here it will be strong positive, right? But it will be heterogeneous since papilloma will have a mixture of inner epithelial and outer myoepithelial cells. Therefore, ER and PR will be positive but heterogeneous, right? In papilloma with DCIS, since DCIS develops from the inner luminal cells, only inner luminal cells proliferation, no myoepithelial cells. Therefore, the DCIS component will be strong positive with ER and PR. And similarly, say, papillary DCIS will be strong positive with ER and PR. And all these things will also be positive since the carcinomas are our luminal epithelial proliferation and not myoepithelial proliferation. And for other stains, only one stain, which is a special stain for the solid carcinoma, which is synaptophysin and chromogranate, which will stain our solid papillary carcinoma if it has neuroendocrine differentiation. So let's do a quick review of our classification just to sum it up. And then we are done with this papillary lesions of the breast. So generally, if we make a mind map, the papillary lesions of the breast, classify them into number 1, benign, just one lesion. Number 1, benign, one lesion, intraductal papilloma. Number 2, pre-malignant. Classify it on the basis of the pattern, whether it is focal or diffuse. If I find focal DCIS features, it's basically papilloma, but the papilloma is developing DCIS within it. But if I find that there are diffuse DCIS features, then it's basically a DCIS, and the DCIS has papillary features, so it's papillary DCIS. And the third one, number 3, is malignant, and the 3 malignant has 3 lesions within it, which I will classify on the basis of pattern. The first one, if I find an encapsulated or an intracystic lesion, then this is a encapsulated papillary carcinoma. If I find the predominant pattern to be solid, then I will call it a solid papillary carcinoma. but if it's predominantly invasive or infiltrative, then I will call it an infiltrative papillary carcinoma. And this concludes our discussion on the papillary lesions of the breast from Kurt's notes. And thank you so much, Dr. Kurt, for these notes. And I appreciate your listening and patience. So I'll meet you next time with another revision lecture. Till then, happy studying.